Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
Have you ever noticed how the people who smile the widest can sometimes cause the deepest pain? Why is it that the ones closest to us often hide their true intentions behind charm and flattery? And what if the first step to freedom isn't fixing them, but finally seeing them for who they really are? Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear, but they need to. The first step to deal with toxic people is not to fix them. It's to recognize them. Not who you hope they'll become, not who they once were, and not the version they pretend to be on Sunday morning or social media. You must know the real person behind the charm, the flattery, the guilt trips, and the silent treatments. That's who you need to recognize, because toxic people don't wear name tags. They don't walk into your life announcing their intentions. They often arrive with smiles, gifts, and promises. And if you're not careful, you'll miss the warning signs. Not because they weren't there, but because you were too kind to call them out, too loyal to believe it, too hopeful to admit it. But here's the truth. You have to stop calling manipulation miscommunication. You have to stop excusing disrespect as personality. You have to stop mistaking gaslighting for a misunderstanding. What's toxic is toxic. Anything that drains your spirit, robs your joy, clouds your mind, and pulls you away from God's peace is not meant to stay. You were not created to live in confusion, to tiptoe around someone's anger, or to live in fear of their reaction. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's not family. That's bondage. And God's truth will always set you free if you're brave enough to face it. Recognizing the red flags doesn't mean you're being judgmental. It means you're finally being honest. It means you're waking up to what's been there all along. And the hardest part of waking up is realizing you stayed asleep so long because you didn't want to face what you might see. Deep down, you knew something wasn't right. You felt it, but you kept turning the other cheek, not out of obedience, but out of fear. You didn't want to stir the waters. You didn't want to seem harsh. You didn't want to be alone. So you silenced your discernment, and that silence cost you. But now is the time to open your eyes. Now is the time to admit what your soul has known all along. Not everyone in your life is meant to stay. Some are there for a reason, but others are there as a lesson. And the longer you ignore that lesson, the more painful it becomes. Don't let sweet words blind you to bitter patterns. Don't let shared history convince you to stay in unhealthy proximity. Don't let memories make you forget the misery. People reveal who they are not in the big moments, but in the small ones. Watch how they respond when you succeed, how they react when you set a boundary, what they say when you're hurting. Pay attention, because the truth is not in what they claim. It's in what they consistently do. And let me say this with love. Some of us are so accustomed to being disrespected, we call it normal. We've been trained to tolerate behavior we should have walked away from long ago. We tell ourselves, that's just how they are. Maybe I'm too sensitive. If I just love them harder, they'll change. But love doesn't cure toxicity. Love doesn't fix manipulation. Love doesn't excuse control. Real love tells the truth. Real love sets boundaries. Real love walks away when peace is being strangled. God never called you to be a doormat for anyone's dysfunction. He didn't place you on this earth to constantly live on edge, to second-guess your worth, or to stay chained to someone else's emotional leash. That is not your portion. That is not your calling. And if you've been stuck in that cycle, hear this: you don't have to remain there. The moment you recognize a toxic person for who they are is the moment you begin to take your power back. That's when you start to see clearly again. You begin reclaiming your voice. You start choosing peace over pleasing. And that, my friend, is the beginning of freedom. Because when God opens your eyes, He doesn't just show you what's wrong with them. He reveals what's been missing in you. He shows you the courage you forgot you had. He uncovers the strength buried beneath compromise. He reminds you that life is not meant to be lived in constant survival mode. You were created for more than that. So if that voice inside whispers, "This isn't right," don't silence it. That isn't paranoia, it's discernment. It's wisdom. It's God urging you to stop overlooking, stop excusing, stop labeling poison as harmless. Because no matter how sweet it looks in the glass, it will still kill your joy if you drink it. You've seen enough, you've felt enough. Now it's time to trust what you know. That's where healing begins. Some people believe distance equals defeat, that stepping away means giving up. But here's the truth. Sometimes the most courageous act of real love is creating space, not to punish or shame, but to protect. Protect the peace God planted in your soul. Protect your mind from confusion. Protect your spirit from corrosion. When someone brings chaos into your life, wounding you with words, turning every moment into a battlefield, stepping back isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. There is a difference between carrying someone and being carried away by them. And the hard truth is, many of us have been drowning trying to keep others afloat. We've confused loyalty with sacrifice. We've mistaken enduring abuse as something noble. The truth is, when you let someone harm you repeatedly without boundaries, you're not walking in grace. You're standing in quicksand. And God never called you to sink for someone who refuses to swim. Distance doesn't mean you stop caring. Sometimes it means you care enough to stop allowing the damage. It means realizing you can forgive someone and still refuse to give them access to your life. You can wish someone well and still walk in the opposite direction. You can love someone deeply and still decide to close the door, because love without truth is not love at all. Some of the hardest choices you'll ever face come from choosing peace over presence. But hear me, peace is never accidental. It's intentional. It's something you protect, fight for, and preserve. Toxic people, knowingly or not, will chip away at that peace until you hardly recognize yourself. You begin questioning your worth. You start feeling like you're walking on eggshells in your own home. You find yourself adjusting your personality to match their moods. And that is not peace, that's torment. But there comes a divine moment when the Holy Spirit whispers, it's time. Time to stop chasing people who run in circles. Time to stop explaining your heart to those who mock it. Time to stop sitting at tables where your spirit is drained instead of fed. And that time is now. We live in a culture that idolizes connection, as if being surrounded by people means being whole. But even Jesus knew when to withdraw. Even Jesus stepped away from the crowd to pray alone. Even Jesus, perfect in love, walked away from hardened hearts. So why do we stay? Why do we cling to places God is calling us out of? Because we're afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of what others will say. Afraid of feeling guilty. But remember this. There is a difference between guilt and conviction. Guilt keeps you bound. Conviction leads you into freedom. Guilt says you owe them more chances. Conviction says you've done all you could. Now let God do the rest. Creating distance isn't about anger, it's about alignment. You're not rejecting them. You're realigning yourself with God's peace. You're saying, I love you, but I won't let you steal my joy. I forgive you, but I won't let you tear me down. I release you, but I won't let you control the narrative anymore. And don't expect everyone to understand. Some will call you selfish. Some will accuse you of being unforgiving. Some will twist your silence into pride. Let them talk. Let them assume. Because only you and God know the nights you cried, the prayers you prayed, the patience you poured out. You didn't walk away too soon. You held on longer than you should have. When you finally step back, don't rush to fill the space with noise. Fill it with God. Let Him minister to the broken places in you that kept trying to fix someone else. Let Him heal the wounds they left behind. Let Him rebuild your confidence. Distance is not punishment, it's preparation. God isn't just removing something from your life. He's making room for something better. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes quietly, with silence, with stillness, with a calm you thought you'd lost. And when that calm returns, when clarity settles in, you'll realize the distance was God's mercy. It wasn't rejection. It was protection. You didn't lose, you were rescued. And that rescue was long overdue. There comes a moment when you must accept that some people are committed to misunderstanding you. No matter how calmly you explain, how much you clarify, or how pure your intentions are, they don't want the truth. They want control. They want to twist your words, drain your strength, and keep you trapped in a cycle of endless explanations. But here's the truth that sets you free. You don't owe anyone your constant defense when God has already declared your heart. Some people aren't listening to understand. They're listening to gather ammunition. No matter how honest you are, they'll accuse you of lying. No matter how patient you are, they'll call you dramatic. No matter how much love you show, they'll claim you never cared. You can pour yourself out completely and still be told it wasn't enough. Because the issue was never about what you did. It was about the lens through which they chose to see you. So many live exhausted, not from the work they do, but from the battles they keep fighting to be understood by those who don't care about truth. They care about control. And the more you explain yourself to someone determined to be offended, the more entangled you become in their web of confusion. It's a trap, one the enemy loves, because it drains you spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. It steals your focus from what God is trying to do in your life. You were never called to spend your energy proving your worth. That's not your job. You were not created to perform for acceptance. Your identity is not defined by their opinion. It's grounded in God's truth. And if they refuse to see your heart, it doesn't mean your heart is broken. It means their eyes are closed. Let them wrestle with that. Let God handle that. You keep walking in peace. There is great power in learning when to be silent. Not silence born of fear, but silence born of wisdom. Silence that refuses to argue with foolishness. Silence that no longer tries to fix what only God can heal. Silence that says, I've said enough. I've done enough. Now I'll rest in what's true. Even Jesus remained silent before his accusers, not because he lacked words, but because he knew their hearts were already hardened. He knew no answer would satisfy their judgment. And if the Son of God knew when to be quiet, don't you think we should learn the same? Stop sacrificing your peace on the altar of someone else's misunderstanding. Some people need the last word because they're fighting insecurity. Let them have it. Some need to paint you as the villain to protect their ego. Let them talk. Truth does not panic under pressure. It stands firm, unmoved, because light always exposes darkness in time. You don't need to rush to your defense when you serve a God who sees it all. He sees the words spoken behind your back, the games they played, the way they twisted things. And he sees your heart. He sees your tears. He sees the nights you lay awake, wondering if you could have said it better, done more, or if it was somehow your fault. Let me assure you, it's not. If you've searched your heart, spoken in love, stood in grace, and they still refuse to see you clearly, that is no longer your burden to carry. Release it. Release the need to be right. Release the desire to be understood. Release the obsession with changing their mind. Their opinion of you does not change God's plan for you. There is sacred strength when you stop defending yourself and start trusting God with the outcome. That's where freedom begins. You stop chasing peace through arguments and start resting in the peace that surpasses understanding. You stop talking and start praying. You stop striving and start trusting. And yes, people may say you've changed, and you have. You've changed from needing their validation to walking in God's affirmation. You've changed from over-explaining to over-trusting. You've changed from desperate for approval to confident in your calling. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. So the next time they twist your silence, let them. The next time they call your peace pride, let them. The next time they accuse you of walking away without explanation, let them. You don't have to justify what God has already settled in your spirit. Keep walking, keep loving, keep living, and let your silence testify for you. When you're dealing with people who stir up trouble, who bring confusion instead of clarity, bitterness instead of blessing, you must learn early. Your peace is too precious to place in their hands. You cannot allow toxic people to dictate the atmosphere of your life. Because if the enemy cannot destroy you, he will try to distract you. And one of his greatest tools is the toxic spirit of another person sent to drain your energy, steal your joy, and cloud your vision. God never called you to manage someone else's dysfunction. That burden was never yours to carry. You are not responsible for fixing people who are committed to remaining broken. You are not called to babysit bitterness or negotiate with negativity. Your role is not to absorb the poison they freely pour out. Your role is to guard your heart. Scripture reminds us, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. And when someone continually pollutes that well through manipulation, guilt, gaslighting, or anger, it is not unkind to protect yourself. It is not rude to set limits. It is not ungodly to say, enough is enough. Some will test your boundaries just to see if you truly mean them. They'll apologize with words, but never change their ways. They'll smile in public and sabotage in private. And if you allow it, they'll convince you it's your responsibility to keep the relationship alive even while they're tearing it apart. But hear me clearly, some people do not want peace. They want control, not reconciliation. They want dominance, not unity. They want superiority. And the longer you try to be the bridge for someone who only brings fire, the quicker you'll burn out. Let me tell you something that might set you free today. Boundaries are not selfish. They are spiritual. Boundaries are not walls that shut love out. They are gates that keep destruction from coming in. From the very beginning, God created boundaries. He separated light from darkness, land from sea, day from night. Even in Eden, there were lines not meant to be crossed. Yet somehow we've believed the lie that saying no is unloving. But love without boundaries becomes slavery. Mercy without wisdom becomes manipulation. Grace without truth becomes a game. And your soul is too valuable to play games with those who have no intention of honoring your peace. Sometimes the most spiritual act you can do is step back and let people feel the silence of your absence. You've tried talking, forgiving, meeting them halfway, and even all the way. But all it did was teach them that your love had no limits and their behavior carried no consequences. That's not grace. That's dysfunction disguised as kindness. You were never created to live in survival mode, bracing for the next argument, the next lie, the next emotional storm. That is not love. That is not friendship. That is not family. That is bondage. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, freedom, rest, and restoration. Not chaos, not fear, not walking on eggshells every time you enter the room. God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. And when someone continues to bring confusion, that is your sign, not to hate them, not to curse them, but to remove yourself from their reach. And yes, it will hurt, especially when the person is close to you, someone you've prayed for, cried over, tried to help change. But real change doesn't come from pressure, it comes from the heart. And if their heart isn't ready, no amount of sacrifice on your part will save them. Only God can do that. Only the Holy Spirit can convict. Only grace can transform. Your role is to step back and let God be God. You don't need to argue. You don't need to post statements, gather witnesses, or win debates. All you need is to walk in truth and remain in peace. The fruit of your life will speak louder than any defense you could give. Peace will be your testimony. Stillness will be your strength. And when they come looking for drama but find you resting in God, that's when you know you've won. Not the argument, but the war for your soul. Some will say you changed, and you did. You stopped trying to fix what God never asked you to carry. You stopped trying to prove yourself to people who would never see you clearly. You stopped sacrificing your peace on altars that were never holy. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. In that wisdom, you'll discover a calm you didn't know existed, a stillness no storm can touch, and a strength that doesn't shout but simply stands. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. There's a sacred lesson in choosing not to chase those who keep walking away from your peace. There's a strength that rises in your spirit when you stop begging to be seen, heard, and understood by people who have already decided who you are. The truth is, you don't lose people when you stop chasing them. You lose chains. You lose anxiety. You lose confusion. And in return, you gain something far more valuable: clarity, freedom, and peace that only God can provide. The world tells us, go after them. Don't let them leave. Make them understand. But the Spirit says something else. The Spirit says, stand still. Let the door close. Trust that what walks away was never meant to stay. Because anything or anyone that must be forced to remain is not rooted in love. It's rooted in fear, control, and insecurity. Real love doesn't have to be chased. It doesn't have to be convinced. True love stands. It stays. It grows in truth, not manipulation. Yet so many people are exhausted, not because they're out of breath, but because they're out of alignment, constantly chasing toxic people, hoping for approval, hoping for change, hoping for a different outcome from the same pattern. But chasing never brings peace. It only deepens the wound. It only teaches others that you'll tolerate anything as long as they don't walk away. There comes a time when you must pause and ask yourself, why am I running after people who keep proving they're not for me? Why am I spending energy explaining myself to those who don't care to understand? Why do I feel the need to prove my worth to someone who has already chosen to devalue me? The answer runs deeper. Sometimes we chase not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of what their absence might say about us. We think if they leave, it must mean we weren't good enough. Maybe we failed. Maybe we didn't love well. Maybe it's our fault. And the enemy loves to use that silence to whisper lies into your weary soul. You're not worth staying for. But that's not truth. That's trauma. That's insecurity. And God never called you to live chained to the opinions of those who cannot see your value. Remember this. Not everyone who exits your life is a loss. Some departures are deliverance in disguise. Some people don't leave because you failed. They leave because your growth exposed their stagnation. Your peace disrupted their chaos. Your boundaries revealed their lack of respect. And rather than change, they chose to walk away. You must let them. Don't hold the door open for what God is trying to close. Don't chase what grace is trying to release. Jesus never ran after those who walked away. He loved deeply. He welcomed with compassion, but he never begged anyone to stay. When the rich young ruler turned back, Jesus let him go. Not because he didn't care, but because love never forces. Love invites, and then it releases. If the Son of God didn't chase approval, neither should you. When you stop chasing, you start healing. You begin to see clearly. You realize your worth was never meant to be held hostage by someone else's decision. You stop performing and start abiding. You stop reacting and start resting. You stop proving and start walking in purpose. A holy calm settles over you when your identity is no longer tied to who stays or who leaves, because you now know that those God has for you won't need to be chased. They'll walk with you. They'll grow with you. They'll honor the light in you instead of trying to put it out. And to those who left without cause, who misused your heart, discarded your loyalty, or took advantage of your kindness, you owe them no bitterness. You owe them nothing but silence and release. Let them go in peace and let God handle what you could not fix. Because your destiny doesn't depend on who left. It depends on the one who never will. You were never meant to chase people. You were meant to chase purpose. And in that pursuit, God will send the right people at the right time with the right heart. Not those who use you, but those who walk with you. Not those who question your worth, but those who recognize it and protect it. And until the right people come, keep walking. Head high, spirit whole, peace intact. Because when you stop chasing people, you start catching your purpose. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't on the outside, but within. After dealing with toxic people long enough, you begin to internalize their voices. You start questioning your strength, your kindness, your worth. You may look in the mirror and still see the reflection of someone they tried to break. That's why one of the most powerful choices you can make is reclaiming your voice. The voice that speaks truth over your life. The voice unpoisoned by manipulation, unsilenced by fear, undistorted by bitterness. Toxic people have a way of making you doubt what you already know. They twist your words. They rewrite history. They accuse, not from truth, but from their own broken lens. And if you're not careful, you'll begin to shrink, not physically, but spiritually. You'll start walking on eggshells, speaking less, dimming your light just to keep the peace. But hear me, peace that demands you lose yourself is not peace. That's bondage disguised as harmony. You were never created to stay silent in the face of lies. You were never called to live under the weight of someone else's dysfunction. When God calls you, He also equips you with authority to take your life back, to speak up, to stand firm, and to step into truth with courage. That doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean arguing with fools. It doesn't mean trading insults. It means standing with quiet, unshakable confidence, knowing your worth is not up for debate. Because toxic people thrive in confusion. The more they can make you doubt yourself, the more control they gain over your heart. That's why you must anchor yourself in truth, not in opinions, not in emotions, not in memories, but truth. What does God say about you? That you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That you are the head and not the tail. That you are more than a conqueror. That you were bought with a price, chosen, redeemed, and called for a purpose. And when you internalize that, everything begins to change. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop seeking validation from those who can't see past their own wounds. You stop trying to earn the love of those unwilling to love you unconditionally. Instead, you begin walking in bold humility, not arrogance, but assurance. The kind of assurance that says, I no longer accept the role you tried to assign me in your drama. Some people won't like this version of you. The version that refuses to bend to manipulation. The version that no longer apologizes for having boundaries. The version that won't tolerate disrespect just to maintain a connection. And that's okay, because growth will always offend those who once benefited from your silence. It will confuse those who preferred you insecure. It will irritate those who can no longer control your steps. But let them be irritated. You are not living for their comfort. You are living for your calling. And your calling is too important to be drained by empty conversations. It is too sacred to be entangled with people who have no desire to grow. Your healing matters too much to let anyone keep reopening wounds God has already begun to heal. Taking your power back doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming clear. It means deciding you will no longer be the emotional punching bag for someone else's pain. It means drawing a line in the sand and saying, I love you, but I will no longer sacrifice my peace to prove it. It means stepping out of the shadows of who you once were and embracing the strength God is building inside you. Don't let anyone guilt you for walking away from dysfunction. Don't let them label your boundaries as bitterness. Don't let them twist your strength into selfishness. They don't know what it cost you to get here. They don't know the nights you cried, the prayers you prayed, the weight you carried in silence, but God does. And He's the one lifting you now, not to harm those who hurt you, but to free you from the prison they kept you in. So walk tall, speak life, hold your peace, and never go back to the places God has already rescued you from. You are not who you used to be. You've grown, you've learned, you've survived, and now it's time to thrive. Not in spite of them, but above them, because God's hand is on your life, and His purpose is greater than any person who tried to dim your light. When you stop shrinking, you start shining. Wishing you good health, happiness, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mindset Daily.